Hello. In this video, I'm going to interview myself about my experience with loneliness and how I got past it. So, Ton, when did loneliness arise in your life? It started at my birth. It was via a rushed cesarean section due to complications. My mother was in very bad shape after that and hovered on the verge of death for a while. So there was little or no contact with her body, and I was not at her breast. At that time, I'm talking about 1962, it was not known how important that first time is for bonding between child and mother and vice versa. I try to imagine what this feels like for a baby. It is known from the psychological literature that these experiences traumatize the child. The child perceives that there is no adequate response to his needs, and this causes a lot of stress. It is essentially a life-threatening feeling of being abandoned, exactly the same thing that we call loneliness later in life. It creates what they call insecure attachment. Did things gradually get better when you were growing up? The relationship with my parents was quite difficult often. At home, I was punished for committed vices with sometimes corporal punishment, or the other extreme, total silence, as if you didn't exist. My parents did not do this out of sadism, mind you. The idea was that such punishments would develop a good moral sense. Parenting methods were common like that. They had learned it that way too, and in my generation, many children experienced it that way at home. Where we lived, I found hardly any playmates my age, and my brothers were many years older. Yet, for years, I saw them as my only friends. Did you have a good connection at school? No. I didn't feel accepted, or I was excluded by my classmates. I wondered why they bullied me so much, and I tried to adapt. For instance, I started collecting and trading football cards in the schoolyard, like they did. The pictures didn't interest me, but I thought then I'll have something that interests them too, and maybe I'll get a friend. Anyway, that's not how it worked. This kind of loneliness in the schoolyard is something that many of the participants in the Getting Past Loneliness program recognize. I remember just making up a friend with whom I had adventures in our village. Anything a child does to avoid feeling isolated. Did you actually understand what was happening in your life? Things like these that happened to me felt extremely unfair. To what had I deserved this? Always trying to understand what I should do or refrain from doing anyway. Understanding other people, reasoning out their behavior, that became my most developed tool. I was very good at suppressing my own unpleasant emotions and not feeling them. Understanding myself was a lot harder. That's how I spent a good part of my adult life as well, low in emotions, high in brain power. Dealing with girls, I still had to learn completely, to be honest. For a long time, I was afraid I would spend the rest of my life alone. Until I was 26, I didn't have a love affair anyway, no matter how much I longed for one. But from the age of 26, loneliness was no longer an issue for you? Still, because insecure attachment also meant that I behaved convulsively in love relationships, afraid of punishment, rejection, and abandonment. The women with whom I would later have a child and be together for 20 years, had to endure that. I only realized the impact of insecure attachment when, in 2014, she no longer wanted to continue living with me after more than 20 years. I felt abandoned and feared it would never, ever work out with me. I don't want to dramatize this, but that divorce was a personal hell for me. If I understand correctly, a sense of loneliness or fear of loneliness has dominated much of your life. How have you got past loneliness yourself? In my hopelessness, I tried and learned a lot of things from 2014 onwards. During those years, my sense of loneliness transformed into a great sense of connection with my surroundings and also an anchor of peace within me, with myself. I no longer fear being alone. I live alone, very remote, but at the same time connected to others, offline and online. And the whole subject of being alone has relaxed. It was a long and sometimes difficult learning curve. How did you achieve that relaxation? I will list what really helped me a lot. First, I mentioned meditation to calm my mind, but I also learned that meditation can sometimes magnify a certain fear or panic. So what to do then, I also learned. Secondly, diving into my previously unconscious childhood experiences and the emotions that come with them. Certain breathing exercises, body work, and self-examination also helped me tremendously, especially to gradually learn to process certain charged, difficult emotions. Also, I kept a diary about my inner world, which helped to reveal the common thread. So it is mainly an inner processing of your emotions and thoughts. That's right. And in doing so, I took a more or less scientific approach. In the 1980s, I had already studied social psychology and later Buddhist psychology and neuropsychology, the study of the brain and the nervous system. You know, spiritual inspiration and imagination can be fantastic, but I always want to keep keenly observing the distinction between reality and imagination and nonsense. That's why I also had to examine my beliefs, thoughts I believed without really being aware of it. For example, the idea I have to make an effort so that people want to be in touch with me, or the thought, without regular contact with others, my life will go off the rails. Those kind of beliefs are worth learning to examine without fear of what you might encounter. Did you actually have counseling? Oh yes, there were significant conversations and sessions with people who guided me along my path. Bodywork and breathwork and things like that I was able to learn because other people suggested it to me, showed it to me, worked with me. That's important. And beyond that, I've also read a lot about loneliness and all the backgrounds in personal lives, but also in how our society looks at relationships and being social. How did Getting Past Loneliness come about as a program? Through my studies and coaching work with clients, I discovered that a lot of people actually want or need to learn the same thing when struggling with the emotion of loneliness. It is important to notice that inner work is something that we all can do. I know how painful loneliness is and how it takes away your joy in life. Willing to help with this, I developed this training program. I'm very happy that this program works people indeed start to free themselves from that heavy emotion called loneliness, their whole lives change as a result. They feel differently, they spend their time differently, they sleep better, their relationships become more relaxed anyway, they get a better self-image, are less afraid. Experiencing that change with participants is really fantastic. So now you have an idea about how Ton has dealt with loneliness in his life. If you're interested, ask for more information about his program, Getting Past Loneliness. Take care.